Hey everyone, my name is Chef Nick Peters Bond. Welcome to or welcome back to my channel. This is Commanding Your Kitchen. And on today's episode, we are going to be making a prosciutto wrapped chicken breast with an artichoke and sun-dried tomato cream sauce and some braised leafy greens. The inspiration for this episode today and this recipe was from Food Network. So for 2020, which has been a rough year for everyone, the two most searched items on their website were kale and chicken, which I thought was very interesting. These two items aren't revolutionary or new, but I really wanted to take these two items and maybe give you at home, the viewer, an easy weeknight meal or something different to cook at home. So first up, I'm going to show you how to clean your Swiss chard and your kale and how to chop that up. So when you get your Swiss chard, it has a giant stem on it. So what you're going to do is just take two of your fingers and basically pull the leafy part away from that. And I'm just going to stick that in my strainer because I'll be cleaning that. And then save these stems, and I'll show you why. So once we get this all done, you're just going to take it again, pull it, and it comes right off. The reason why we're saving these is because we're going to cook these and eat these. They are a little bit heartier than the greens. That's why we're going to separate them, because they don't have the same cooking time. So when we saute these, when I show you, we're going to saute the chopped up stems first, and then we're going to add in our leafy greens after. I mean, look at these colors too. Like, look how pretty this is. So it's like orange and greens and pinks and reds. You don't have to use rainbow Swiss chard. They have just plain Swiss chard. They have all red. The flavor profile is just a little bit milder than I think kale can be, and I love it. It's just a different variation of kale. So I wanted to use both kale and Swiss chard today to show you maybe a different green that maybe you haven't used before, that I think you really enjoy. Okay. So once we get this done, I will show you to chop up the stems, and then I'll show you how to cook these greens. Remember, always wash your leafy greens. Sometimes these have sand on them and stuff like that, so you just want to give them a good rinse. All right, so now that that's done, I have this little measuring cup right here. I'm basically going to chop up the stems, and these are going to be cooked first. And that's because, like I said, they have a different cooking time. So chop off some of the dead ends on that. And just give them a little chop. They don't have to be so fine because they do cook fast, but not quite as fast as the leafy part. Chop this. The tippity tops I don't typically use. They're a little skinny, a little more woodier than the base, but the base of these are really tender, and they're also really delicious. And I love using the rainbow Swiss chard because it does have those colors that are really pretty. And they do maintain some of their color as well once you cook them. So they won't just basically wash out like some stuff does. It doesn't really lose too much of its color. And when I show you the final product, you can kind of see that. Do a few more so you get the idea. And then after I start cooking these are going to braise for a little bit, these greens, with some onion and garlic and some red pepper flakes, which is optional. I do think it adds a lot of flavor, a little bite to them that they do need. And then after these are cooked, we finish the whole dish, or the greens, I should say, with some vinegar. And that really just, you'll see if you make this, it really just transforms the greens. It definitely needs that acidity in there. Cut these stems up. So you get the gist of that. So when we come back, I'll clean up and I will show you how to start braising. So that I have all these stems chopped up fairly small in this little container here, I'm also going to add into there 2 garlic cloves and then 1 small onion. Take the back of your knife, smash it. I'm sure you've seen people do this on TV or wherever thousands of times. You don't even, or you can buy pre-minced garlic if you wanted to. Especially for people at home, if you're making like a weeknight meal, sometimes it's just you don't have time, it's easier to buy that. But so I'll put the garlic aside. There's 2 garlic cloves and 1 onion, like I said. I'm just going to mince the garlic, and then I'm going to slice the onion. And this is really just building those flavors with these greens, because yes, they do have some flavor in them, but you're gonna you need to amp that up a little bit. And the nice things about these greens is the longer they braise, the more they cook down, the more these flavors kind of meld together, and it becomes really nice. All right. So the onion, again, don't worry too much about the size. If you like onions a little thicker, do them thicker. Just remember, try to make everything similar in size, not necessarily worry about how big it is. because things that are similar in size will cook evenly. And you don't want to have like a giant chunk of raw onion and versus, you know, something that's burnt. So I just slice these like this. Again, you've probably seen someone slicing onions a million times, but... Okay. And I'm going to do the onions with the stems first, and I'm going to leave the garlic separate and do that after so the garlic won't burn. To me, there's like nothing worse than burnt garlic's taste and smell. There's just something about it. There's a fine line between roasting and burning. Alright, so put this in there. I'll probably start crying in a minute. So I have this pan set to a medium-high heat, and I'm just going to put in about, don't quote me there because that's eyeballing, about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And let that just heat up a little bit. And then once this is heated up, we have our sliced onions and also the stems in there. I'm gonna let that go. You don't necessarily need this to be super high heat right now because we don't want everything to burn really quickly. So you can hear it slowly starts to saute. You can get some color on these onions, and I found with onions, low and slow is a little bit better if you're looking to caramelize them. So just break those up a little bit in there once you slice them. And you can see those really pretty colored stems in there. And those will start to cook down. And you need to do this for about 3 to 4 minutes, and then we'll add in our braising greens, I should say. We'll add those in. You always want to season as you go. So for this, I'm taking some crushed red pepper flakes. This is optional, like I said. They're not too spicy, but you know, if you have kids that don't love a ton of spice, then maybe just do half that amount. That was maybe half a teaspoon. And then I'm just seasoning with salt just to layer salt and pepper throughout the dish. We will season this again. So this is cracked black pepper and some kosher salt. It looks like a lot, but trust me, once you add in the braising liquid, in this case we're going to use chicken stock. You're more than welcome to use vegetable stock if you are vegetarian or vegan. And obviously don't have the chicken. I'm starting to cry. So these onions are going to saute for about 5 minutes with the stems, and then we'll add our other stuff in. While the onions and the Swiss chard stems are sauteing behind me, that had the red pepper flakes and some olive oil and salt and pepper in there, I'm going to move on to the kale. This is one of the most searched ingredients on foodnetwork.com for this year. Unlike the Swiss chard, I'm not going to save the kale, all the kale stems, because this kale in particular, these stems are a lot woodier than Swiss chard. Swiss chard stems are a little more delicate. What I want to do is just pull you in here and show you how to cut a leafy green like this. Don't use too much at once. It's almost similar to like an herb where you want to roll everything, or a green for like a lettuce or something if you were chopping it. You rough chop this. This doesn't have to be chiffonade or very fancy. It's going to be braised down and cooked down, so you kind of want bigger pieces. So I'm just going to show you. I'm just going to do rough chops like this. Keep everything rolled nice and tight when you're doing it. And then we'll wash all this together. I'll show you again. Most of the stems are taken out of this purple kale because they're a lot woodier than the Swiss chard stems are, but this way you can see. Same thing with this one as the Swiss chard. You just pull it off. As you see, it's a little trickier than the other one to peel, but okay. Roll everything nice and tight. Doesn't have to be, this isn't a chiffonade, so don't worry about. And then just chop it. That's it. Rough chop. For this particular thing, it's okay because it's going to be braised. It doesn't have to be so fine because braising will just cook everything down. Right, so my onions are smelling good, so it sounds like I'm ready to put my garlic in there. And remember, we held off on putting the garlic in there because we didn't want it to burn. Because garlic can burn very quickly. And it basically overtakes the dish and ruins the flavor of it. So we'll go add in our garlic, and then wash these greens off, and then add these in. So I went ahead and added in our minced garlic. Give that a stir. You can see there's some caramelization going on here, which is what you want. That's why we put the garlic in after, because we didn't want it to get too toasty. So I'm turning this down a little bit. I'm just turning this down to medium-low versus medium-high now that it's going. We've gotten some translucency on the onions. All right. So the garlic is now in there, so now we're going to add in our greens, which have been washed. And this seems like a lot of greens for a small pan, but just like with any green, like spinach or collard greens or something like that, it's gonna cook down. Should have no sear. It'll be a giant mound for a few minutes. And then once a few minutes go by, you can come in with maybe some tongs and just kind of lightly toss it, and then it will cook down, trust me. So we're gonna let these saute a little bit, let them cook down, and then we'll flip them, rotate them, and then we'll add in our braising liquid once those get sauteed. So as you can see, the greens definitely cooked down. This has only been a few minutes. All our purple kale and our Swiss chard is in here with the onions, the garlic, and the Swiss chard stems. I'm now gonna lightly season the greens now that they're already in here. Again, with this time a little less salt, and then some pepper. This is just layering flavor. I think the one biggest mistake home cooks make is not seasoning their food properly. And then questioning, you know, why is something bland or maybe it doesn't have a flavor. It's all about layering. The onions, the garlic, the red pepper flakes. Then you added your kale and you're just gonna keep layering flavor. And so now would be a time, if you did wanna add in some white wine to this recipe, you could add it in now. I'm going to simply use chicken stock for today, and then the vinegar, but if you did want to add white wine, that would be a nice addition as well. So I have 2 cups of chicken stock. I'm going to use half for this, and then the other half is going to be for our chicken dish. Just pour your chicken stock in. It's about half. Okay. Stir that around. And turn this on low now. And that's gonna simmer. That's gonna take about, I would say, 25 minutes to a half an hour total to really cook down and really concentrate on those flavors. I'm gonna cover this and then let this braise while we work on our chicken dish. Okay, so now we are going to move on to the chicken. So as you can see here, this is just a boneless, skinless chicken breast that I had seasoned with garlic powder, onion powder, dried thyme, salt, and black pepper. And that's what I have in here. And so I'll show you how I just wrap these. It's super simple. You could easily use bacon if you didn't have prosciutto or you didn't want to spend the money on prosciutto. There is some like cheaper bacon out there. Maybe even a ham. I wouldn't use like a deli ham, but maybe ham would be fine on this too. So just generously coat both sides of this with your seasoning mixture. Again, you're just layering flavor. And you really want to have enough seasoning on here that it eats through the whole piece of chicken. You don't want to put a tiny sprinkle of chicken. It's not tiny sprinkle of salt on the chicken. It's not going to do anything. So you're really going to season it generously. Okay. So now that that seasoning's on there, you just take. I'm doing 2 slices of prosciutto per chicken breast. So this recipe serves about 4, since we are using 4 chicken breasts. I mean, could I easily house 2? Sure, great. Well, Mike and I after this probably eat this whole thing. Who's to say? So I have my 2 pieces of prosciutto here, and I'm just gonna wrap. You can spread them out a little bit too, but that's it. You're just gonna wrap it up. That's it. It doesn't mean completely like covered. That's totally fine. You can have some of the chicken exposed and it looks nice as well when you're searing it. It's like the two different kinds of sears going on. You're searing your prosciutto and your chicken. So again, take a piece of prosciutto, and it's okay. Clearly mine aren't staying intact. I have always had an issue with this type of prosciutto when you buy it sliced. It's always a mess, but it's so damn delicious, so it's worth it. Okay, spread them out enough, put your chicken breast down, and you're just gonna wrap it up. It's literally it. And this, even just adding this adds so much flavor to chicken because the fat that's in the prosciutto will kind of render off into your dish and it'll be just fun. Okay, so I'm gonna put my chicken breast aside that have been wrapped, and we're going to move it a little bit closer, and we're going to take a look at like how we're gonna sear these in a pan. Here's a little tip. If you have a cutting board at home that tends to slide on your surface, I just take a damp paper towel, and you can either like crumble it up or just lay it out flat and put your cutting board on top of it, and it prevents the cutting board from sliding around so you don't cut yourself. A little chef tip for you if you didn't know that. So I have my nonstick pan here preheating, which I'm gonna add a little bit of neutral oil to it. Like extra virgin olive oil is fine for this, or you can use vegetable oil, anything like that. Let's check in our braising greens. This was the kale, the Swiss chard, and those pretty stems in there. They did lose some of their color, but depending on how long you braise it for is really when you'll kind of notice the color change. Okay, so then I'm just gonna add in the finishing ingredient in this, which is balsamic vinegar. I have about 1 to 2 tablespoons there. That's an ingredient that you can kind of do to taste. In my opinion, you do need to put some sort of splash of vinegar, something. Now I'm gonna leave the cover off and turn this up to let that kind of cook down and reduce and cook some of that liquid off so it's not so watery. And in my other pan, I have the pan on medium-high heat, and that's gonna start searing our chicken. Give this a good stir. All right, we're gonna let that cook down. And in this pan, I have my chicken. Olive oil is fine for this. I did say neutral oil, but you don't necessarily have to use that. I'm not gonna go too crazy with the oil, maybe 1 or 2 tablespoons, because there is a tiny bit of fat on the prosciutto already itself. So we're gonna give that a second. Let that come up to temp. You wanna just preheat this at medium, medium-high. To test it, you can always just kind of like slowly, that's the sound you wanna have when you're searing something. And I chose a large nonstick pan because this I can probably fit all my chicken breasts in the pan, but you always don't want to overcrowd, so you'll see these 4 will fit nicely in here. And then once we get a good sear on this, we're going to remove them, sear on both sides. We're going to remove them and then add in our other ingredients and start our sauce, and then the chicken will return to the pan to finish cooking in our sauce. So I'll show you that. Greens still braising down, we just added that vinegar in there, which is just really going to add a nice tart bite and kind of cut through all that heavy braising flavor. So for the sauce for the chicken, like I said, it's going to have sun-dried tomatoes with a little bit of their oil, they're marinated, as well as marinated artichoke hearts. You could use non-marinated. I just think it just adds to that complexity, which in a quick way that you'll get from something like a marinated artichoke heart. The sauce is going to have those in there. It's going to have our remaining cup of chicken stock. And then there's a cup of heavy cream, which I know it's aggressive, but this serves about 4 people, so it's not as bad. And then we're gonna have some shaved Parmesan on top as well, of course. And then this is something which I love with these types of chicken dishes with like a nice sauteed pan sauce, is that it can be served over like mashed potatoes, pasta, rice, something that's like an easy weeknight side that you can just whip up real quick. I think we're gonna have ours tonight. I'm gonna be eating this dish with my husband. We're gonna have mashed potatoes, because I still have mashed potatoes left over from the day after Christmas. My mom made a huge batch and they're so good. So I'll probably have this with mashed potatoes. So let's an example. You could do rice pilaf, plain rice, honestly, something easy like that, which is, kids love it as well. This type of thing, my daughter will basically try anything, so this is a great way, if your kids aren't picky, this is a great way to get them trying new different flavors, and then that way they'll get used to them. So, I'm showing a little bit closer. So I'm actually going to swap these pans so you can see kind of what's going on in this one. So we have our chicken wrapped in prosciutto, and this is on a medium-high heat. I'm going to give it a quick little check, and the chicken will usually tell you, especially if you're not using a non-stick pan, which you don't have to for this recipe. The pan will tell you when something's ready to be flipped, and that's with a lot of different proteins that you're going to be cooking in a pan like this. So it's letting me flip it, but I can just see visually it's not enough time. So I'm gonna let this cook for, I think, maybe about 5 minutes aside on medium-high heat, and then that's when we'll take them out and start our sauce in there. So for the sauce ingredients, I have, what is that? 1 to 2 tablespoons of butter with 2 sliced cloves of garlic, roughly 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup of julienne sun-dried tomatoes, and oil. I did keep about 1 teaspoon to 2 teaspoons of oil in there. That's just gonna, again, increase the flavor in our sauce. And I have some quartered marinated artichoke hearts. You don't have to use marinated, but to me, this is just another layer of flavor in the dish. I was very interested to see that kale and chicken were on the top 2 search words on Food Network's website for 2020. It was interesting to me, but I feel like a lot of people are at home now, and kale's healthy and kind of a buzz. It's been kind of like a hot ingredient for years now, and it's very healthy, that's probably why. And then also chicken's just so versatile, which I think at-home cooks struggle with different ways to cook chicken, so that's why I'm excited to share this with you. And the best thing about this type of saute pan sauce with chicken is that you can kind of change the ingredients. If you don't, you could add capers instead of artichoke hearts. You don't have to use the heavy cream. You could use chicken stock, white wine, and capers, and some lemon juice, and you have piccata. Leave the artichoke hearts in there. That's great in piccata as well. You don't want to use heavy cream, you could use half and half. It's just not going to be as rich and as thick once it does reduce down. So just kind of like those kind of things to think about. It doesn't have to be so exact what I do. I think the one thing people forget is that there's so many other interchangeable things that this technique I'm doing is great with so many different things. Change the vegetables up, change the heavy cream up, change the sauce up, and you'll be successful with kind of whatever you choose that pairs well within reason together. Don't do something crazy, but and that's what I love about this type of recipe is that you don't have to use kale and Swiss chard. You could use baby spinach or spinach. That's another thing that's really great substitution in this. But always remember that kind of stuff cooks way down. So I think I had one giant bunch of purple kale and one giant bunch of rainbow Swiss chard. So make sure you have enough because it does cook down so much. And then switch it out. Use spinach instead. It really doesn't have to be so exact. Like I said, use bacon on the chicken, all that kind of good stuff. And these braised greens definitely remind me of like my husband because him and I would make this all the time in our last house. For some reason we were on this big diet kick and kale is a healthy ingredient and we would do this braised greens. It just tasted so good. Another optional ingredient that we used to add other than the white wine into it is some either like a diced tomato with like the seeds and the insides removed or just like a can of drained diced tomatoes you can get at the grocery store. It doesn't have to be a fresh tomato. And this is another thing that's good to use up for like stuff in your pantry that you have. Like this type of stuff could be in your fridge already, half used. Throw it in sauce. So I'm going to turn down the pan. As you can see, it starts to smoke a little bit. That's okay. So that's what you're looking for on your prosciutto is it starts to get golden brown. And like I said about the two-tone sear, you have a seared piece of chicken in your seared prosciutto. That's stunning. And like I said, you could use bacon with this. I just had prosciutto and it's bomb, so I want to use that. All right, so a couple more minutes on this side. And then we will add in our sauce ingredients, and I'll show you how to do that. And then, now that the chicken has been cooking for about 5 minutes aside, I'm going to remove it from the pan. You see that great caramelization on there. Remove it and set it aside. So in here, you're gonna turn the pan down, leave the oil bits and all that good stuff in there. Turn it down to low, add in your garlic and your butter. Don't worry about this burning because it's gonna be very quick. It's not gonna be cooking in the butter for very long because we're gonna go right in with the other ingredients. Quick saute on that. You could slice them thinner. You could just crush them, the garlic, and leave them whole and just discard them before serving. I like the bigger slices of garlic as long as it's cooked properly, it's delicious. So as you're stirring, you can see I'm just getting some of those bits off the bottom of the pan. And then what we're going to be doing with our liquid is essentially it's called deglazing. And that's just going to help further remove the rest of those brown bits from the prosciutto and chicken at the bottom of the pan. All that seasoning we put on the chicken before, it'll just help raise it. Tiny pinch of salt in here. Tiny. Just to get that going. And season that garlic. All right. Now that the butter's melted, the garlic's been sauteing for a moment, I'm gonna grab my chicken stock. And so that was about a cup to 3/4 of a cup of chicken stock in there. And I use chicken, a roasted chicken base. So it's basically a paste of bouillon essentially. You can make your own chicken stock. You can buy chicken stock canned in those really cool cardboard containers now. It doesn't have to be like a homemade hour-long thing. This is something that I already had in my house. This is a great recipe, like I said, for things that you already have in your pantry. So I'm bumping up the heat. As you can see, the chicken stock already kind of changed color, as well as I got a piece of Swiss chard in there. But the chicken stock's already kind of changed color because of the brown bits in the bottom of the pan. And so all that is flavor. So then you're going to add in your heavy cream. And don't put it in too soon. Heavy cream can... So I'm going to stir this up. And then I'm gonna add in my other ingredients. Add in back the chicken back in and let it go. I mean, to me, this is fairly simple. I understand, you know, it's interchangeable is what I think is the best thing about this. So mix those in. Crank the heat. Now with the heat, I have the heat at a medium high. We're gonna let this then reduce for about 5 minutes. Add our chicken back in, which has been resting on the side. So we'll put all the chicken and all those yummy juices on the pan right back in there. And we'll finish this dish up. All right, so the sauce is reducing. I am gonna take some Parmesan. You can buy a block like this, or you can get pre-grated, pre-sliced. Obviously, I think the flavor is a little bit different, but people at home don't feel like you need to go out and spend $15 on a block of Parmesan cheese. It's not realistic for some people, and that's okay. That's okay. Just buy already pre-grated, that's all right. But splurge if you have the money. So that was maybe a few tablespoons. I'm using the same spoon for my Swiss Chard because it's my husband and I eating this, and we're gonna be eating it together, so we don't care. But if you were, you know, serving for other people, maybe use a different spoon or something. But so you can see it's starting to slowly reduce. I have the heat blasting, so it's gonna get thicker than this, but I'm gonna add back on my chicken to help finish cooking the chicken through, because at this stage it's not fully cooked through. So, and in there, pretty side up. Add in those extra chicken juices from the pan. All right, so you can see there's plenty of space in between each chicken breast. It's not overcrowded. That's another thing I said. Don't overcrowd your pan. And at this stage, your greens are almost done. So it's nice to time things together. I knew that these would take a long time to braise, almost equal time to this, but a few extra minutes. So this is, I'm gonna turn down to low now, and these are essentially done. I'm just keeping them warm. And that's it. And then this, I'm gonna leave on medium high. I'll pull you back out a little bit. And you can see it's boiling. Don't be afraid. The heavy cream's not gonna break. The sauce won't break. Heavy cream can take the reduction of itself, essentially. So don't worry about that. Putting it in there, move it around every once in a while, making sure nothing's sticking to the bottom. You can pour some sauce over top. I'm gonna leave the other ones not, but I'm just showing you that's fine too. If some gets on top, it's not gonna be the end of the world. I like to leave one side, have a little, not be drenched in sauce, because I just think you don't want to lose that like pretty sear. You already did, and I think that's one thing that I hear a lot on like cooking shows, or if you sear something, then don't put like a sauce on top of it, as I did right there. But that's to show you it's not a big deal. I am gonna smother mine in sauce myself, but some people like to have that be the presentation side, which is like my husband would like that, versus me slopping sauce on it. Do a little additional cheese. There's no real amount to this. It's maybe a half a cup total for 4 chicken breasts. I'm just gonna go ham right now and just like cover the top in this delicious Parmesan cheese. At this stage in the game is really important, I think, to taste your food. So I'm gonna grab a tasting spoon, try it, see if it needs to be re-seasoned. So as you can see, typically when a sauce coats the back of the spoon, that's called nappe, that means it's done. I prefer my sauces to be a little more rich and thicker than that, but you could stop it at this point and still have a pretty sauce, as you can see right there. Again, the back of the spoon, it doesn't run when you run your finger through it. So that's what all the fancy people on TV say, but it's fine. All right. So this doesn't need salt. I think I put enough salt in it. It has the prosciutto and the cheese, which then help with the sauce. So I'm not gonna add any seasoning to this. It's perfect the way it is. And I think that's one thing, if you guys take anything away from this, it's season as you go. So that way, and then also try it before you serve it, so that way you're not surprised and be like, oh, you know what, I think I need salt and pepper. It should be good. But always taste it, just in case. So I'll keep moving these around. As you can see, in between and around the sides, it's starting to get thicker. Just keep doing this. Let it go. You know, it's okay for it to boil down. It's not gonna, don't let it reduce too much, but it's not gonna go so far you're gonna be like, oh crap, like it's burned. Just, it's fine. Let it boil. I'm gonna turn this now on low, because now I feel like it has that sort of like heavy boil I was looking for. It's on low, essentially just to keep warm and cook the chicken through. So like I said, if you want to be extra like me and add in some chives or Italian flat leaf parsley or something like that just to brighten the dish up, it also just adds a nice color contrast to the monotonous kind of like red-brown color, which I think is important if you're at home. It tastes good, it looks good, you want to eat it more. Especially with kids, you don't make it look as appealing as possible. So I just did, it's maybe a 1/2 small bunch of chives, nothing crazy. So that was it. So now it's time to plate. I have my mom's delicious mashed potatoes here on my plate. I just plopped them down, took a spoon, quick little indent, and that's it, nothing crazy. I'm gonna take our braised greens. As you can see, so much of that liquid has gone. It just evaporated and kind of just concentrated and cooked down. I still like to take a slotted spoon and press it up against the side of the pan and kind of squeeze the greens out, because greens hold so much moisture that you don't necessarily want covering your plate. It'll just make everything kind of runny. And I kind of put those right in between the mashed potatoes right there. Plop them in there. Delicious. I have the chicken tented just as it was keep staying warm as it was finishing cooking. So, let's get tongs. So you're just gonna take one of these, put it right on top, and then you're gonna take a spoon and just get some of that extra sauce and those artichoke hearts and some of those sun-red tomatoes. Trying not to cover too much of the top of the chicken because you did work on that sear. So do that. I'll actually drizzle. And that's it. Like I said, this dish is so versatile and you can change so much in it. It doesn't have to be exactly what I do. But I think that's hard with cooking shows and things like that, is that people want to do exactly what I'm doing, or exactly what whoever's doing your favorite cook or chef. I think you don't need to follow exactly this. This is just a starting point for a weeknight meal. I'm putting more Parmesan cheese on top of mine. You don't have to do that. This is obviously optional. But it adds to the drama of the dish too. You know, gotta be a little extra. And that's it. So this is the prosciutto wrapped chicken breast with my mom's mashed potatoes and some braised greens. I had kale and Swiss chard. And there you go. So that's it. I hope this dish inspires you to maybe try a new chicken and kale dish at home during quarantine. These are crazy times, and I think you want to make food as interesting as possible. So just hope this is another interesting take on chicken that you can do at home. As always, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Give this video a big thumbs up if you do like this kind of content. And please turn the bell notifications on. That basically notifies you when I post a new video. And as always, as my friends and I say, if you're trying this dish at home, you got this. You got this.